Well, hello class. This chapter, chapter 2, within module 1 is going to be on workforce diversity and also EEOC. So let me kind of give you the long and short of this chapter. This chapter has a lot to do with strategic management. What are some of the changes that we're looking at right now when relating to diversity? Okay, well, let's start out with EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Laws, and they go all the way back to the Fifth Amendment, which was ratified in 1791, that basically states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. From there, that evolved into the Equal Pay Act of 1973, and that was amended in 72, which made it unlawful to discriminate in pay on the basis of sex when jobs involve equal work, equal skills, effort, and responsibility, and are performed under similar working conditions. Now, let's go to the Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And basically, the background on that is that it says it's unlawful to fail or refuse to hire or to discharge an individual or otherwise to discriminate against any individual with respect to his or her compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of the individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The Act says it is unlawful to limit, segregate, or classify his or her employees or applicants for employment in any way that would deprive or tend to deprive any individual of employment opportunities or otherwise adversely affect his or her status as an employee because of their race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Now, we have Title VII, and we want to know what that covers. It basically covers all public or private employers of 15 or more people, all private and public educational institutions, federal, state, and local governments, public and private employment agencies, labor unions with 15 or more members, and joint labor management committees. EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, was established by Title VII, and it consists of 5 members, and they all serve 5-year terms. They are appointed by the President of the United States with the advice and consent of the Senate. The EEOC investigates job discrimination, complaints, and may file charges in court. Executive orders by various presidents have expanded some of the effects of equal employment opportunity laws in federal agencies. During President Johnson's administration, that was between 1963 and 1969, he issued Executive Order 11-246 and 11-375, which requires contractors to take affirmative action, and that is steps taken for the purpose of eliminating past discrimination acts, and that is to ensure equal employment opportunity. Then we had what they call ADEA, and that is the Age Discrimination Act, the Age Discrimination and Employment Act of 1977, which made it unlawful to discriminate against employees or applicants for employment who are between 40 and 65 years old. Vocational Rehab of 1973, which requires employers with federal contracts of more than $2,500 to take affirmative action for the employment of handicapped people. The Pregnancy Act of 1978. It's an amendment to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits sex discrimination based on pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical issues. And the thing is, Federal Agency Uniform Guidelines on Employee Selection Procedures are uniform guidelines issued by federal agencies who are charged with ensuring compliance with the EEOC legislation. And what they do is they kind of recommend, or they come up with guidelines, employee procedures regarding matters such as how we select employees, how we keep records of their employment, questions we can ask on pre-employment inquiries, and affirmative action program. The selected court decision regarding EEOC, there were a couple of cases to look into in their court decisions. It would be Grigg versus Duke Power Company, Albemarle Paper Company versus Moody, and then we also have the Civil Rights Act of 1991, which places the burden of proof on back on employers, and it permits compensatory and punitive damages for discrimination. And this has to do with testing for certain employees. For example, if a rejected applicant demonstrates that an employment practice has a disparate or opposite impact on a particular group, they have a right to file charges. Then also in 1991, we had the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires employers to make reasonable accommodations for disabled employees, and it prohibits discrimination against disabled persons. Mental disabilities account, believe it or not, for the most number of ADA claims. Mental impairment includes any mental or psychological disorders such as emotional or mental illness. Examples could include major depression, anxiety, and personality disorders. Now, I want you to look up what is a qualified individual, and also what is a reasonable accommodation. The thing is that when you look at traditional employer defenses on ADA, employers used to prevail in about 96% of federal case appeals on ADA decisions. A U.S. Supreme Court decision typifies why an assembly worker sued Toyota, arguing that carpal tunnel syndrome prevented her from doing her job. The employee admitted that she could perform personal chores such as fixing breakfast. The court said the disability must be central to the employee's daily living, not just the job. The ADA Amendment Act of 2008 makes it easier for employers to show that their disability, employees to show that their disability is influencing one of their major life functions. Then we have Genetic Information on Non-Discrimination Act of 2008. And then there's religious and other types of discrimination under EEOC. And then there is sexual harassment. I want you to know the difference between quid quo pro and a hostile environment, and you can read all about that. And there are also some cases in your book that talk about sexual discrimination. Some of the defenses against discrimination, it isn't just sexual, it could also be for other things related to discrimination because of race or color, culture, demographics, anything like that. You should be able to look at it. And also sex, such as male, female, or other. There are a lot of good cases in the book. There is also what they call BFOQ, which is a bona fide occupational qualification. It's a defense used to justify an employment practice that may have an adverse impact on members of a protected class. Read about that. It is a requirement that an employee be of a certain religion, sex, or national origin where there is reasonable necessity to the organization's operation. So this is even more narrowly interpreted by the courts. So you want to focus on looking at religion and national origin in that area. Look at illustrative discriminatory employee practices, things you can and can't do as they relate to recruitment, selection standards, sample discriminatory promotion, and I want you to know the EEOC enforcement process. In other words, all managers should have a working knowledge of the steps in the EEOC claims process. How do you file a claim? What is an EEOC investigation? What is voluntary mediation? What is mandatory arbitration? Now, we also have diversity management and affirmative action. Well, what does diversity mean? Diversity means being diverse or varied, and at work it means having a workforce comprised of 2 or more groups of employees with various racial, ethnic, gender, cultural, national origin, handicap, and other religious backgrounds. Look at how to manage diversity, look at diversity's barriers and benefits, look at EEOC versus affirmative action. That's going to be important because, again, a job should be based on qualifications and not for any other reason. Affirmative action goes beyond equal employment opportunity by requiring the employer to make an extra effort to recruit, hire, promote, and compensate those in protected groups to eliminate the present effects of past discrimination. Look at and read about what reverse discrimination is about. So that's kind of an overview. Look at those cases, look at this overview, and I'm going to throw some videos up for you to watch, YouTube videos on the content of this chapter.